Imagine having to wipe someone else's bottom every single day. Now imagine that person is the King of England. Welcome to the world of royal servants, where saying no wasn't an option and the jobs were absolutely disgusting. The most disgusting job in royal history was the Groom of the Stool. This person had one main duty. They wiped the king's bottom after he used the toilet. Think about the worst part of changing a baby's diaper. Now imagine doing that for a grown man every day. The Groom of the Stool did exactly that for kings like Henry VIII. But this job wasn't given to just anyone. Only wealthy noblemen could become the Groom of the Stool. Why? Because they spent so much private time with the king. They became his closest advisors and friends. The Groom of the Stool had other duties too. They helped the king get dressed each morning. They carried his chamber pot wherever he went. They even tested his urine for signs of illness. During toilet time, the king would discuss important matters. State secrets, war plans, and royal gossip were all shared. The Groom of the Stool heard everything first. Some groomsmen became incredibly powerful because of this access. They influenced major decisions about war and peace. They helped choose who married into the royal family, all because they were willing to handle royal waste. The job required special equipment too. Groomsmen used expensive silk cloths and perfumed water. They carried portable toilets called close stools everywhere. These toilets were made of velvet and gold. Even traveling was complicated with this job. The Groom of the Stool rode behind the king's carriage. They brought backup chamber pots and cleaning supplies. Royal bathroom breaks couldn't wait for proper facilities. The position lasted for hundreds of years in English history. Kings from different centuries all needed their personal toilet assistant. It finally ended when more modern plumbing was invented. Can you imagine applying for this job today? What would you put on your resume? Royal food tasters had to eat everything before the king did. Their job was simple but terrifying. They protected the king from poison by risking their own lives. Imagine being afraid of every meal you eat at work. Food tasters lived with constant fear of death. One bite of the wrong dish could be fatal. These servants ate small portions of every single dish. They waited 30 minutes between each taste. If they didn't get sick or die, the food was safe. Only then could the king eat his meal. Food tasters didn't just test main courses either. They sampled every drink, sauce, and seasoning. Even the king's wine had to be tested first. Nothing reached the royal mouth without being checked. The job required incredible bravery and loyalty. Many food tasters died from poisoned meals. Their families were usually rewarded with money afterwards. But that didn't bring back their loved ones. Some food tasters used special techniques to stay safer. They carried antidotes made from exotic herbs and minerals. They studied which foods were most likely to be poisoned. They learned to recognize the taste and smell of different poisons. The kitchen became a dangerous battlefield because of this job. Cooks had to be watched constantly for suspicious behavior. Every ingredient was checked multiple times before use. Trust was impossible when poison was always a threat. Food tasters also tested things beyond meals. They sampled the king's toothpaste and mouthwash. They even tested his bathwater for harmful substances. Poisoners were creative, so tasters had to be careful everywhere. The most famous food taster was a man named Locusta. She worked for Roman Emperor Nero in ancient times. She actually helped poison people instead of preventing it. This shows how dangerous and complicated the job can be. Would you be brave enough to risk your life for someone else's lunch? Before modern toilets existed, royal servants dealt with human waste daily. They emptied chamber pots, cleaned them, and disposed of everything safely. This job was called being a night soil man. Think about the smell in a public restroom on a hot day. Now imagine carrying buckets of that waste through palace hallways. Night soil men did this every single morning without fail. Chamber pots were used by everyone in the royal household. Kings, queens, princes, and princesses all needed their pots emptied. Some palaces had hundreds of chamber pots to collect each day. The servants had to work quickly and quietly. They collected all the pots before anyone woke up. They couldn't make noise or spill anything on expensive carpets. One mistake could cost them their job, or worse. Disposal was complicated and disgusting too. The waste had to be carried far from the palace. It was dumped in special pits outside the city walls. Sometimes it was sold to farmers as fertilizer. Night soil men wore special clothes that could be washed easily. They covered their faces with a cloth to block the smell. They carried perfumed water to clean themselves afterwards. Even with protection, the job was absolutely horrible. The work was dangerous as well as disgusting. Human waste carried deadly diseases like cholera and typhoid. Many night soil men got sick and died young. Their life expectancy was much shorter than other people. Some palaces tried to make the job easier with special systems. They built secret passages for waste removal. They installed better ventilation to reduce smells. But the basic work remained the same and awful. The job required physical strength and a strong stomach. Workers had to lift heavy buckets up and down stairs. They couldn't show disgust or complain about the smell. Royal servants always had to appear professional and respectful. Night soil men were paid very little for this essential work. They were looked down upon by other servants. Yet without them, the palace would have become unlivable quickly. How do you think you would handle this job for even one day? Royal body servants handled every aspect of the king's personal cleanliness. They bathed him, cut his nails, and cleaned his ears. They even picked lice from his hair and beard regularly. Imagine being a professional hair washer at a salon today. Now picture doing that job when people only bathed once a month. Body servants dealt with months of built-up dirt and grime. Bathing was a huge production that required multiple servants. They heated water in giant pots over open fires. They carried heavy buckets upstairs to the royal bathroom. They tested the water temperature with their own hands first. The servants had to scrub every inch of the king's body. They used rough brushes and strong soaps made from animal fat. They cleaned between his toes and behind his ears. No area was off limits or too gross to handle. Personal grooming was equally disgusting and detailed. Body servants trimmed nose hairs and cleaned out earwax. They popped pimples and treated skin conditions. They removed splinters and cleaned infected cuts too. Lice removal was a daily battle in royal households. Everyone had lice because they rarely washed their hair. Body servants spent hours picking tiny bugs from royal scalps. They used special combs and killed each louse individually. Dental care was another revolting responsibility for these servants. They cleaned the king's teeth with a cloth and salt. They pulled out rotten teeth with primitive tools. They dealt with terrible breath and infected gums daily. Body servants also handled more intimate personal care needs. They helped with bathroom visits and cleaned up accidents. They changed dirty undergarments and washed soiled bedsheets. Nothing was too private or embarrassing for them to handle. The job required incredible attention to detail and patience. One missed spot or careless moment could anger the king. Body servants had to be gentle but thorough always. What's the most disgusting personal care task you can imagine doing for someone else? Royal servants couldn't refuse these disgusting jobs, no matter how awful they seemed. The groom of the stool wiped royal bottoms for centuries. Food tasters risked death with every meal. Night soil men carried human waste through palace halls. Body servants handled every gross aspect of personal hygiene. These jobs show us how different life was before the modern conveniences we take for granted today. What disgusting job from history surprised you most? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more shocking historical facts.